Good evening and welcome to another episode of Unscripted and Unchained RPG Review. I am DM Bluddworth, and as you can see by the graphics, today I'm going to do an Unchained tabletop RPG hot take on the issue of when does a player character's backstory become problematic. So the reason why this is a hot take is that it is something that has come up over the last couple of days where I was interacting with another gamer on Facebook, and the issue of backstory had come up, and I don't quite remember how, but I was not as clear, and I was much more abrupt with my responses to some of the issues that I felt were problematic, and I gave just the one solution, which is probably the most severe, and I didn't fully flesh out my opinion on it in general, and I certainly didn't go over the other steps that I would have taken prior to that very last step. And so I felt that doing a video on it would be much more clear as to what my opinion is on it, and perhaps for that individual, they'll have a better understanding of where I'm coming from. So without further ado, I'm actually going to jump right into a PowerPoint. I decided for this here, I wanted to really lay out my ideas and go over each point, just for a change of pace for this channel. So let's jump right to that. And let me just double check to make sure it is there. And yes, it is. So now I'm going to go to here. So here we have Unchained TTRPG Hot Takes. When does a PC backstory become problematic? What should a character backstory be? And again, once this is my opinion, and you're certainly welcome to chime in the comments section if you see anything that you disagree with, or if you agree with it as well. All right, so what a backstory should be, it should include your character's name and their race and or species if you prefer. Where is the character from? So basically, if you're aware of the world setting that you're in, you should have where, what town or city or village your character is from, possibly what region. What is the profession of the character's parents? All right, so, whether it be the father's profession, the mother's profession, just in general, you don't have to go too detailed with it. What non-class or non-weapon proficiencies does the character have, if the game system has those kind of things? Because a lot of times they could be something that will reflect some of the personality that you're trying to infuse into your character. They might be directly related to the profession of the parents. So it's always good to know kind of what other skills the character has as part of their backstory. What attribute or trait does the character have that stands out? And that could be anything from your ability scores to special traits or trainings or anything that they might have, physical features that they might have. So anything that might be part of a way to tell a little bit more about the character. What class is the character upon reaching level 1? All right, so all of these other things are kind of building up into then what is the class of the character? All right, and so that certainly should be as part of the backstory as well. What is one event that brought the character to first level? So it shouldn't be, at least in my opinion, it should not be a whole series of events or just a whole lot of content leading up to first level. just important enough to know what was the one event that really brought the character from the threshold of being 0 level to 1st level. What is one major motivation and 2 minor motivations for this character? And that's basically it. All right, again, in my opinion, once you have this down, and we're talking about a 1st level character here. So once you have this down, this might produce maybe 2 paragraphs of information, all right, and just straight to the point. It could be bulletized just like you have it here, or it can be written out in paragraph form with some flowery language if you wish, and so on. But it is short, it's brief, and it's very much to the point of answering the question, how did the character transition from pre-adventuring to a 1st level adventurer? What a character backstory should not be. The backstory should not be more than basic info on the previous slide and should be approximately 1 to 2 paragraphs for a 1st level character. Now you could decide, if you're starting off with a character that's 5th level, then yes, you can certainly have a backstory that could run more than a single page or 2 pages or such. It really depends on how much detail you want to include in there, from level 0 through 5, and it could be quite a lot there. But again, I'm talking about a new player coming to the table with a 1st level character, and this is an expectation that I kind of have for my own table, and this is kind of what I'm looking for. So if I see things like this where these are the should not be's, then I'm going to start to wonder if the player might need some guidance as to how to integrate this character into my gaming table and just the general group and what we're looking to do. It should not grant any advantage not generated by character creation unless approved by the DM. So if you want to include some kind of an advantage, let's say my parents were very rich, or my uncle gave me a +1 suit of chainmail as part of an inheritance. All right, that's the kind of thing that should not really be included in a backstory to then justify something that a character is starting off with that no other characters in the party are also beginning with as well. So unless it's approved by the DM, and as a DM I would usually tie to any main advantage one or more disadvantages that go along with it. It should not predetermine any future status or event that has yet to be experienced. I have read some backstories. I have heard about backstories that included these very lofty, not even goals, they were lofty accomplishments that the character had written already in their backstory, yet they were a 1st level character, and so nothing should be in there that is not going to be approved by and then experienced in future activity by the DM or the rest of the party as well. It should not include any story element that is outside of the DM's setting or vision for the campaign. All story elements should be done in consultation with the DM in session 0. All right. You may say that I want my half-elf ranger to be proficient in laser rifles. if I'm playing in the world of Greyhawk and I'm running a campaign in there and, that technology does not exist, it is not going to be allowed. I don't really care how much the vision of your character is going to include that. It's not something, a story element that is going to fit within the vision of the DM for the campaign or the setting. How can an excessive backstory be problematic? So here are some of the problems that can arise from an excessive backstory. An excessive backstory can create unreasonable expectations on the part of the player. He or she may naturally expect that every element of the backstory will in some way be reflected in every adventure. I have actually experienced this where, the player constantly wanted their story to be told in almost every single adventure. In some way, it was always about that character's achieving his or her goals throughout the various adventures, even though there were as many as 7 other players in this particular group. It was always, what about me? Second, it could conflict with the plans or vision of the campaign or the world setting of the DM, especially if no consultation occurred. So consultation is key here. The zero session is very, very important to hash these things out before play actually begins. It takes the player's focus off what adventures, experiences, and social interactions that may lie ahead and remain mired in the past where the DM and the other players have no experience, knowledge, or have any interest in. All right, it becomes I want to fulfill what I said I was going to accomplish rather than concentrate on what we as a collective group are going to accomplish, experience, and interact with. And it could lead to derailing the rest of the group's fun. All right. I know a party of, 6 or more is a quite large party in my experience for whether it's Dungeons and Dragons or most RPGs out there. And so the more player characters that are involved, being controlled by more players, the harder it is to allow just one player character's story to to shine all the time. It does have to be spread out and rotated fairly often so that everybody feels engaged. But the most important thing is to how to bring those backstories and motivations together in order to create a common motivation, a common goal, which is a good transition to what we're going to talk about now. How I would handle a problematic backstory. The first step is to review characters and their backstories during session 0. Then have a discussion with each player individually if necessary. As the DM, you should have your players hand you a copy of their character sheet and a copy of their backstory. Unless they're rolling the character sheet, rolling up the character in front of you during session 0. But a lot of times I found that players will come with their character already pre-generated and already with somewhat of a backstory. So it's important for you to spend that full session just reading through these things, thinking about the character and how that character may or may not fit within your vision for the world setting, the campaign, or even for the adventure that they're about to uh, embark upon. Once you get all of the characters in your hands and you've read through them all, you'll also start to see ways that you can integrate these together. Next, I would explain to the players what elements of their backstories can work and especially how they can be dealt with as a collection to enhance party cohesion. This is the begin with the positives first approach. So, as you can see, and unlike my conversation on Facebook, I'm laying out the earlier steps that are much more positive in addressing the issue. And for that, I kind of regret the exchange that I was having where it didn't fully get to where I was coming from. Next, identify and discuss individually with the player whose backstory does not work well with the vision of the world, campaign, or in general with what the rest of the party is planning. Be constructive and ask the player to work with you to tweak their backstory. So, once again, this is in session 0, and you're going to sit down with the player and say, hey, listen, that laser rifle that you're looking for your half-elf ranger to use doesn't really fit into this world setting, this campaign, or just in general what I'm looking to do in this in this gaming group. So if you can think of a specialized kind of missile weapon, maybe one that is not magical and not high tech, but something maybe a little bit more unique, a little bit rarer to see, and then we can go with that instead, or some other kind of tweaking that may take place. There are just very different options that you can go here before you go to anything really harsh or negative, and that's what we're talking about here. We're still in the cooperative mode here. If the player refuses to make any changes, inform the player that you as the DM will not recognize or account for elements that are an issue. It is okay to say no as the DM. This is a big one, and I know that this is going to cause some blowback for those that believe that an RPG game is essentially a player's narrative and story, and that the DM should not say no. The DM should always look to say yes, and then see how they can work it in. I'm not that kind of DM. I'm not going to shy away from telling players, no, this doesn't really fit in the campaign, in the world setting, or for this adventure or gaming group. And hopefully they take it to heart and we can sit back down again and work something out where everyone can be satisfied with the outcome. In some cases, the other players, through their characters' actions, might also rectify the issue by overruling the PC's attempts to dominate the group's collective story. In rarer cases, I have heard of and even participated in direct or indirect or direct PvP. So this is where it starts to get out of hand, where the player is actually conducting his character in a way that it is disrupting the rest of the group. And I have seen the full gambit of this, where player characters just refuse to pay attention to or follow any of the whinings of the player. I have also experienced or heard of, and I've actually had a player character very early on in my gaming experience actually participate in indirect PvP, uh, where basically my character was a female character, and she basically set up the other player character with collusion with the DM. So the DM was kind of in on it, and there was always a chance that it could fail. But she basically set him up to and left him high and dry, and he ended up getting killed in the adventure. And then I played my character's reaction out uh, in order to um, in order to convince the other player characters and players that I really had nothing to do with it, and it was just a, you know, an un, you know, an unknown event, an event that I really couldn't do anything about, which was complete subterfuge, and so you know, certainly made the rolls. The DM definitely made the rolls to see if I was convincing and such, and you know, managed to get away with it. But this is kind of an extreme case where the players take the matters into their own hands to take care of that one individual player, uh, and the way he or she is conducting that character. And then finally, and this is the one that I kind of led off with on Facebook, is if the player persists in interjecting the prohibited elements, disrupting the table in any way, death finds a way. But still make it a meaningful death, and don't create the circumstances where it is an absolute certainty, just that it's likely that the character is going to get killed off. And I think that's what really got the other individual like, oh, that's really just terrible approach to take. And I didn't fully flesh out really the first three bullets that you see here. I kind of jumped right to the, you know, maybe the last three, and really the last one is what I laid out. It was like, you know, you can always knock off the character as a DM, and I have since, upon reflection, thought slightly differently, or at least thought I should explain it a little bit better than that. So in conclusion, backstories are important, but an RPG is about experience what stories have yet to be told. Hopefully this is all a rare experience, but one I have seen and heard of a bit more frequently in recent months. This has to do with, I believe, with RPGs where character death is a rare event. In such systems, players wrap their characters in that safety blanket of apparent invincibility and the expectation that all of their characters' motivations will be fed and their goals met. This and other unreasonable expectations needs to be addressed in Session 0. If not there, then Rule 0 must be utilized. And Rule 0, if you're not familiar, is the DM is the final arbiter of the case. And so there we have it. And I will switch back to here. So I hope that you paid attention to that. And if you have any comments or negative or positive, anything that you want to point out that you believe I should consider as part of the positives, the negatives, the approaches to how to resolve the issue of a problematic PC backstory, please feel free to leave that comment in there. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you hadn't subscribed, please consider to subscribe and hit the alerts so that you'll get an alert anytime that I upload videos. As I've said in the last several videos, I'm going to try to pick up the pace of the number of videos that I'm producing and try to get it to about 3 or 4 videos a week, if possible. But once again, thanks for joining. And I look forward to seeing you on a gaming screen sometime soon. So you'll have a great rest of the evening and a good upcoming weekend. I know tomorrow's Friday. I sometimes lose track. But have a great weekend upcoming and happy gaming out there. Take care.